I now recognize the ranking member, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Green, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank you for the time. I do not agree with the hearing. I do not agree with the hearing because I think that there are a good many other things that we could be doing today that the American people expect us to do. The American people are pretty fed up with what we've been doing. Not one person lately, and very few at all, have gone to jail as a result of this crisis that was created in 2008. A good many people are still concerned about our having hearings that will prevent people from acquiring the necessary aid that they need to prevent foreclosures, while not having hearings that would help us bring to closure some of the atrocities that have occurred. Now, someone would say that's what the Justice Department ought to do. Well, we can have hearings to find out what happened and encourage the Justice Department to go after people. Someone would say, well, this is within the purview of what we're doing. Yes, it is. But this bill that's going to be mentioned is one that emanates from the Judiciary Committee, and if we can take up issues emanating from the Judiciary Committee with reference to legislation, we can take up these issues that relate to people going to jail. This is why people are so upset with us. This is why you see this election going in all directions. People are fed up. So let's just talk about what we have here today. I think a more appropriate title for this hearing would be "No Good Deed Goes Unpunished." No good deed goes unpunished. The Justice Department lawfully settled these cases in the amounts that have been called to our attention. I would think that these banks would be a little bit concerned about the way their names are going to be thrown around today, because they settled these cases for good reason. They took advantage of consumers, and now they're having to pay. And if there is something unlawful about this, these banks have batteries of lawyers who are capable, competent, qualified, and prepared to take these issues before the judiciary in this country, judges that we put in place. So it's not some alien country that's going to have to deal with these issues. If there are unlawful acts going on, they will take them to court. No court has declared any of these judgments, settlements, unconstitutional. We are doing what is within the law, and the Justice Department really ought to be commended for the outstanding job that it's done. I would also add this. At the very heart of this is the question, are we going to allow monies from settlements, less than 1% by some accounts, by the way, less than 1% of the money that from these settlements is what we're talking about today. Are we going to allow the money from settlements to go to organizations and entities that can help people stay in their homes? That's what this is about. Are we going to allow money to go to counselors who can help people stay out of foreclosure, go to lawyers who can help them? And all of these entities and organizations that people are all upset about have been vetted by HUD. They're on an approved HUD list. You can't get on the list without being vetted. Do some get through that we might not want or someone might not want? Possibly. But they've still been vetted. And by the way, if the money could go to just any organization, the complaint would be you're letting the money just go to anybody. None of these people are vetted. So either way, there's going to be a complaint. I don't approve of this hearing. I think this hearing should be called the means by which we will continue a crisis that started in 2008 with a debacle associated with banks that took advantage of people. Yes, J.P. Morgan Chase has a $13 billion settlement. Yes, Bank of America has a $7 billion settlement. Yes, J.P. Morgan Chase, $17 billion. J.P. Morgan Chase, $13 billion. And then, of course, there's Goldman Sachs with $5 billion. I would think that they would get sick of their names being drawn through the records of Congress and all of these things being mentioned about them. At some point, they ought to say, look, guys, we've had enough. We settled that. We're not complaining. Or maybe they are complaining, but they're not bringing it to our attention. I don't see one banker here today complaining about what's going on. If I'm wrong, someone will tell me. But it seems to me that if you are a banker or a surrogate of a banker, you ought to speak up. The point I would like to make finally is this. At some point, we have to get about the business the American people expect us to take care of. They're sick of conservatives and liberals doing nothing. They want to see us deal with this crisis the way they would be dealt with if they were the culprits. Somebody ought to go to jail. We ought to be having hearings to determine who's going to jail. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back.